this fight's not going to the judges.
Minha intenção é quebrar ele, quebrar o corpo dele, quebrar o espírito dele. Quando tiver tudo quebrado, eu vou fazer o juiz parar essa luta.
I don't know how I'm going to win the fight, but I'm going to finish Thiago.
Welcome to another edition of Bookie Beatdown, your one-stop shop for all the analysis, advice, and predictions you need to make money in the world of mixed martial arts gambling. I'm Paul Chauncey, joined in studio by Cody Saftik. How's it going, man?
Good, man. It seems like the trend we got going here is pay-per-view and then weird fight night from foreign country. And then pay-per-view and then weird fight night from foreign country. So coming off a pretty hot pay-per-view, let's get back to a fight night from a weird foreign country.
We are heading down to Goiania, Brazil. Never heard of it. I imagine it's probably pretty picturesque.
I bet it's hot.
Actually, that's something I thought about last night. I know this is almost getting a little bit off topic just to start the show, but you know what? They should make a prop for how many times they tell you how warm it is inside of the arena. Because every time they go to Brazil, they're like, it is like 137 degrees inside.
Yeah.
And, actually, it's like in the seats, and then like in the octagon, it's like 157 degrees. And there's always crazy upsets, and, everyone always gasses out really early because they're sweating during their walk-in. It's a really big thing.
In pro boxing, sorry to stay off topic here, but in pro boxing, the Thai fighters that fight in boxing, if they leave Thailand, they go to Japan, they have very little success. When the Japanese fighters come to Thailand to fight them in boxing, they have tremendous amounts of success because it is so unbelievably hot in Thailand. And on top of the fact that it's unbelievably hot, they're all outdoor stadiums, right? So these Japanese fighters, they get tired extremely quick. They're thrown off their element. They get dehydrated. They don't get the same zip and the same energy that they used to. It's a big advantage. So you have to assume, if you look at Brazilians winning fights in Brazil, the numbers are astronomical. That being said, they generally get some soft matchups, and we're about to see a couple of them on this card, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into the action anyway. We got Carlos Condit and Thiago Alves going at it in the main event. Carlos Condit, obviously coming off of that massive knee injury they suffered against Tyron, the Chosen One, Woodley. Thiago Alves, kind of a comeback story of his own. He had I forget what it is, but some sort of brain issue or something with his...
Oh, he's also had a
I'm no doctor. I'm no
years.
doctor here, but it sounded very serious. He's been coming back, coming off of that win over Jordan Mean. Interesting stuff to say the least. We got Carlos Condit as a minus 250 favorite with the comeback on Alves plus 210. Who do you like?
Well, it's always hard to bet somebody coming off an extensive layoff, and in Carlos Condit's case, that's exactly what we're getting out of him. I know with knee injuries, it's always a big question mark of how are they going to be able to come back. But in 2015, it seems like knee surgeries is really something that doctors are really starting to nail down. So I think Carlos Condit should be back, not as good as ever, but he should be back well. With Thiago Alves, he had a long layoff as well, and then him coming back from his own layoff, his very first fight against Seth Paczynski, won all 3 rounds. I did not think he looked good in that fight.
I thought he looked okay in that fight.
And I heard people mention that to me, like, oh, it was good. It's like,
but it was against Paczynski.
It's against Seth Paczynski, a guy who's known to get knocked out, especially at this point in his career. He's not exactly having the most tremendous run going for him right now. And Thiago Alves, he just, I don't want to say play it safe, but it wasn't the Thiago Alves that we remember. Not the guy against Matt Hughes, the guy against Josh Koscheck, the guy that's absolutely tearing through people, the former title challenger. It wasn't that guy. He was just a kind of a new version of Thiago Alves. Against Jordan Mean, he got completely picked apart.
It was the body kick, yeah.
It was the body kick that really saved him, but it was the range of Jordan Mean that he just couldn't really get into the inside as well. And I had pointed out to you when we were breaking down the Jordan Mean fight, going into the Jordan Mean fight, is that Thiago Alves is quite a short welterweight at 5'9", and he comes up very short on the end of his punches. If you look at the John Fitch fight, the Rick Story fight, he misses a lot of punches. He's active and he has a great leg kick, but he's got very, very short reach, so he doesn't quite get to the target. Against Jordan Mean, he never even got close to the target. Jordan Mean would hit him long before he could even get close. And although he showed himself having a pretty good chin in that fight and took some good shots, was able to rally back and get the body kick, it was not a good performance by no stretch of the imagination for Thiago Alves. But because he got such a big name, they're not just going to throw you on the undercard somewhere. You're obviously going to be main eventing at some point. You're obviously going to a fight night. Thiago Alves is the perfect person to headline a fight night card. And now he matches up against Carlos Condit, another very long rangey fighter, better than Jordan Mean. Not going to make that type of mental mistake. No. Jordan Mean really, you can see the moment that he busts it for himself. He's that stupid little front roll to get away. And at that point, it's like, oh, he's not focused anymore. Then he gets booted in the body, and that's done. Condit's not going to make that mistake. I think Condit is a very terrible stylistical matchup for Thiago Alves. The only thing that could cost him is we don't know where his knee's at.
And not even just that. Sometimes it's the ring rust. It's been over a year since the last time that we've seen him in the octagon. We saw John Dodson come off his last fight. He ended up getting the win against Zach
fail, though.
Makovsky,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
very, very close. A lot of people scored it for Zach Makovsky in that fight, and it just looked like, he was shaking off the cobwebs a little bit, or not the cobwebs, shaking off the rust a little bit. It was just a little bit, he just didn't look himself. He didn't look like his reaction time was quite there yet.
Well, that's
which
gonna be
could
the
be
big
an
question
issue
here.
with Condit here, but I like Condit, and I think Condit in any other situation, and Alves at this point in his career, I think the odds would probably be a little bit higher. The fact that he's coming off of that injury brings it to minus 250, which isn't great, but it will add value to parlays and whatnot.
I agree. Maybe if it wasn't for the layoff, he'd be in a bigger favorite. But the fact is, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. And with Carlos Condit, he's called the natural-born killer for a reason. This is a guy that has plenty of fights. So I don't think that ring rust is going to be a huge factor for him because he's been in the ring so many times. He's fought in such diverse opponents. However, in MMA and in fighting in general, it's all about timing. It's all about getting comfortable and getting that timing down. And the long layoff, if anything, it's going to hurt his timing. Now, that being said, this is going to hugely benefit him that it's a 5-round fight. Because as we saw with in the Martin Kampmann fight, is that even if Thiago Alves wins the first round, Carlos Condit doesn't have a great first round, he's going to be able to adapt. He's going to get better. He's going to get more comfortable, and his timing will get better. So even if he drops the first, maybe second round, I see him winning 3, 4, and 5, and even finishing Thiago Alves late.
All right, so both of us on Condit, Carlos Condit, to get back on track here. Let's move on to the featherweight division where Charles Oliveira takes on Nick Lentz. Charles Oliveira can be had for minus 270 with the comeback on Lentz plus 230. We've already seen this fight before. And it ended by
No contest.
No contest, legal knee. But up until that point, Charles Oliveira was torching Nick Lentz. They were supposed to fight again, and
Charles Oliveira
got sick.
Charles Oliveira got sick. Then Nick Lentz was supposed to fight Levon Makashvili.
Yes,
then Nick
exactly.
Lentz got sick.
Yeah,
so maybe
exactly.
Little sickness on both sides.
Pretty tumultuous little time there. Long story short, we've got Oliveira, Lentz. Oliveira's got way more reach. He knows exactly what Lentz is going to do. I'm sure Lentz has been improving every single fight, but I don't really see the script changing all that much here, so I do like Oliveira to get her done again.
Well, when we broke down this rematch the first time around, I was all over Oliveira, and as you mentioned, he trucked Nick Lentz bad in that first fight, but it was a different Nick Lentz. I mean, this is Nick Lentz fighting at 155 pounds. First of all, they're both at 155 pounds, but I mean, he went on to go lose to Mark Bocek in his next outing. That was a different Nick Lentz than the one that we have now. Now he's he lost to Chad Mendes, but other than that, since dropping to featherweight, I believe he's 3 or 4-1, so he's been looking good there. Went the distance with Chad Mendes, albeit it was apparently a sick Chad Mendes, so maybe not the best version of the former title challenger. But Nick Lentz is super durable, and with his wrestling pedigree, he can kind of stall people and give them trouble. Taking Charles Oliveira down, hard, not the hardest thing in the world, but difficult. It's holding him down and avoiding his massive amounts of submission attempts. I mean, he submitted Hatsu Aoki, which say what you want about Hatsu Aoki. Submitting him, that is an incredible feat. And just that alone is got to be a big confidence booster for Charles Oliveira. His Muay Thai is very, very nice. He's been training very hard. He's still a young kid, I believe 25, 26 years old, so he's going to be getting better and better. But now I'm thinking, somebody had mentioned to me that him cutting down to 45 it takes everything out of him. And then he gets sick outside of the next Lentz fight. And I heard that
and
leading
he struggled
up to that,
to make weight at different points in his career
exactly.
as well.
And he was a 55er when he came to the UFC, but he was so young and he wasn't having that type of success at 55 that he decided, okay, you know what, I'll come down to 45. Comes down to 45 and has looked good to his credit at 45. But now that he's getting older and he's very tall for the weight class, only 5'11", but for 145 pounds, he seems to be very pencil thin. I think he is having trouble cutting that weight. And so if I get a version of Charles Oliveira who has trouble cutting the weight, who gets to the scale, he's a little bit tired. Yes, he's Brazilian, but he lives in Texas now, so it's not like you will get the home field advantage, but it's not like he's 100% used to the Brazilian temperature at this point either. The Nick Lentz could definitely give him troubles. So at minus 270, that's my big problem here, is that Charles Oliveira is nearly a 3-1 favorite, and I don't quite see it that way. If it was lower, I'd be all over Charles Oliveira, and I do kind of think he's going to win. But the fact is, Nick Lentz has got that ability to take you down, hold you down, grind you, pound you away, that he could definitely do that. So even though we've seen them fight once and Charles Oliveira did own him prior to the illegal knee, this is a new fight, it's a new day, anything can happen. For minus 270, I don't really like it.
And we've got Alex Oliveira taking on KJ Noons. Alex Oliveira can be had for minus 130 with the comeback on Noons plus 110. Alex Oliveira, last time that we saw him, he took on Gilbert Burns on short notice. Everyone just like, Brazilian cowboy, who is this guy? Well, he looked pretty damn good on short notice. against Gilbert Burns. It was one of those situations, though, where, everyone had money. Everyone laid the heavy chalk on Gilbert Burns. And Gilbert Burns kind of went into that fight, I think, and was just like, I want to test out all of the striking that Henry Hooft and all of my other trainers have taught me at the gym. And it didn't go so well. He lost the first 2 rounds, let's be honest. And then he went into the corner, and they're just like, you have to finish this guy. And was able to get him down to the ground, submit him in pretty late heroics. But it was not looking very good for Gilbert Burns in that fight. Alex Oliveira, very long, rangy kind of guy, tough kind of brawler. Very much is kind of like Cowboy Cerrone, just of the Brazilian variety. My worry here is that he's taking on KJ Noons, a really good striker in his own right. I think, he probably will have the reach and stuff against him. But, you look at KJ Noons against Sam Stout, and he was able to absolutely decimate Sam Stout. Now, I know people get caught like that. These types of things are going to happen. You look at his fight against Cruikshank. A lot of people say that Cruikshank was dominating him in that fight. It was pretty damn close.
Wasn't dominating, but I had him losing the 2 rounds up until the eye poke did occur. So something to take into consideration.
So Oliveira, I think he was able to feast on a guy in Gilbert Burns that isn't quite there in his striking game yet, and wanted to work on his striking game. I think a more seasoned striker like KJ Noons is going to be able to get the win here, but it's crazy things happen in Brazil and in sweaty Brazilian arenas. So I wouldn't be surprised, but KJ Noons is my pick on this one.
Yeah, I mean, once again, got to get a dog in at some point. KJ Noons seems to be that dog with a very good chance. A little bit of an interesting note on this one, in that Oliveira makes his debut against Gilbert Burns on short notice, 155 pounds. And I remember seeing him on the scale and thinking to myself, this is quite possibly one of the biggest lightweights I have ever seen in my life. 77-inch reach on him, fighting at 155 pounds. And it was that reach that really played dividends in that fight. I mean, Gilbert Burns couldn't really get anywhere near him. And what I liked about Alex Oliveira is he had good punch output. He was always on him, he was tenacious, and he's so much longer than him and had so much more power than him. He's able to bang him up and hurt him, bang him up and hurt him. Now he's actually returning to 170 pounds. Likewise, KJ Noons, who's a natural 55er, is also going up to 170 pounds for the first time since that Sam Stout fight. So maybe cutting the weight. KJ Noons notorious being very lazy at cutting weight, not good at cutting weight. So cutting to 155, man, maybe that takes it out of him a little bit. Who knows? 170, that'll probably be good for him. And they're both 55ers going to 170. It's not like he's going to be completely overmatched. The reach is going to play for Oliveira. He's still going to carry that 77-inch reach over. But you're right with KJ Noons. That pro boxing experience he has, he is a better striker. He should be able to get the better of the striking exchanges. The big problem for me here is that KJ Noons is very passive. I mean, he only really throws singular strikes. He doesn't really have that aggression. He doesn't really push the pace and go for it. He's got a hell of a chin, but he's not the kind of guy to really go and take the fight and make it his. So I think Oliveira has as good as a chance as anybody else. I'm leaning towards KJ Noons. I need a dog, but Oliveira has proved to be better than most people think.
All right, so Cody and I both on Condit. Cody doesn't like the Oliveira price, but he does think Oliveira gets the job done. I like Oliveira in that spot. Charles Oliveira, 2 Oliveiras in
There's
one.
There's 3 Oliveiras on this fight card, so you got to be careful.
And it's basically like Smith. And then we like KJ Noons to be the upset over Alex Oliveira. Keep it locked here to Bookie Beatdown as we'll break down the rest of the card from Goiania, Brazil, when we return. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown. Paul Chauncey and Cody Saftik here with you. All right, off we go to the light heavyweight division where Ryan Jimmo takes on Francimar Barroso. Ryan Jimmo could be had for minus 270 with the comeback on Barroso plus 230. Ryan Jimmo has been very vocal about not liking his relationship, I guess you could say, with the UFC, that, fighters are treated poorly and yada, yada, yada. Not saying that's not true, or whether it's true or untrue, that's besides the point. That's not a guy who I'm going to be laying 3-1 on. I know Francimar Barroso is not a great fighter, but you got to think it's potentially. Bettors always have to think this way, that it may be in a guy like Ryan Jimmo's mind that, hey, it wouldn't be the worst for me to lose this fight. They're probably already pissed off with me as it is. I get cut, and off I go to see what Scott Coker has has to say.
Yeah, you know what? Not a bad theory. Not a bad theory whatsoever. I mean, as a gambler, I can't be betting on the fact that he's quitting on his career.
No, but you can
And
you can
also-
avoid betting on him because you fear something like that.
But if he loses this fight, it's not like UFC's like, let's get rid of him. One, they can't really get rid of him because he's been very outspoken right now. So if you fire a guy after he is the only person,
But he
speaking out-
lost. He loses to Francimar Barroso. They'll be like, you lost to
I get it,
Francimar Barroso.
but he's got enough wins and impressive wins that it's like, you know what, we'll give him another one. It's like, God damn it, now I got to go lose another one. This is not good. Now Scott Coker's barely going to want me. So I'm going to have to say that he's not going to do that. With Ryan Jimmo, though, you don't know where his head's at exactly. I mean, he's 33 years old right now. I think he's starting to look, where's my future after the UFC? Well, maybe I want to get involved in this union thing. Maybe I want to help out younger fighters. Maybe I want to be the guy that is the patriarch for getting a union started and go after that. So I'm not 100% sure. But how he met, and here's another thing. If I'm the UFC, I'm like, God damn it, this guy talks a lot. Okay, let's give him someone like Glover Teixeira so he'll just get his ass kicked. You know what I mean? Whatever the case is, right? This is a very winnable fight for him, and I expect him to do just that. I was not impressed with Barroso whatsoever in his loss to Hans Stringer. That was in Brazil, so at the very least he should have got some home cooking. It was a very close fight, and even the judges were like, yeah, man, you just didn't do enough. He spent a lot of time with his back against the fence. He got hit a lot, and against Hans Stringer, who is a Blackzilian, yes, but not very good. I mean, he's one of the guys that just benefits from being at a good gym. Now we've got Ryan Jimmo, a guy that spent some time at the MMA lab, but now he's at Power MMA with Ryan Bader and CB Dollaway, and, well, I mean, they've been looking good, and I expect him to do the exact same thing. He's got that kind of mobility because of his karate background that I see he probably just wins a 3-round decision from not point fighting, but essentially point fighting, or something hits, and we've seen Jimmo with quite a bit of power in his UFC tenure at the very least, so I'm going with Jimmo by decision.
All right, so Cody's going with Jimmo. I'm passing on this fight. We move on to the lightweight division where we've got Norman Park as a minus 230 favorite, taking on Francisco Trinaldo at plus 190. Who do you like here?
This one scares me because, I mean, Norman Park coming off a loss to Gleison Tebow, right? So it's like, okay, he just lost to Gleison Tebow. So now his next opponent, okay, we're going to take Gleison Tebow, we'll take his DNA, we'll, you know, put it in one of these cloning machines, boom! Oh, we got Francisco Trinaldo popped out.
What do you call him, Doctor? Masaranduba.
We'll call him Masaranduba. You know what I mean? And this guy fights very...
shakers.
Well, it's like a maraca, you know what I mean? It always has the effect to it. Watch Machete. When you... It's like, uh-oh, something's about to go popping off right now. But back to this
Somebody's
fight.
about to be taken down and held down for 3
Exactly.
rounds.
Norman Park, I was very big up in Norman Park, but when you talk about guys with no tenacity, Norman Park fits that mold to a T. He has no tenacity. He does not go for it. He's morally just like, oh, I've got good wrestling, I've got good submission, I've got decent striking, standing. And he's got all the credentials, but he doesn't put it together well. I hate that about him. I absolutely hate that about him. He had a very close fight with Gleison Tebow, but he never once went for it.
No.
Against Francisco Trinaldo, he's kind of a bit of on the boring side. He looked not great against Akbar Arreola, but he did the same thing to Arreola that he does to other guys, and that's grind them down, grind them down, grind them down. He has that ability to do that to Norman Park. Now, I would bet Norman Park 9 out of 10 times. I'm on Norman Park. But these odds, I cannot justify it because he's too high of a favorite for someone who does not go after the
basically a
prize.
pick'em.
It's basically a pick 'em.
Especially when you're going into Brazil. We went to Brazil. Well, I believe the last time we were in Brazil, that was the night where there was 10 of 11 underdogs came through.
Yeah.
And you know they have you know they're telling you that it's so many degrees inside of the arena and yada yada yada, and these crazy things happen in Brazil. And if you end up in a grinding fight against a guy who grinds like Francisco Trinaldo, and you've already proven in the past that you struggle against guys that have that grinding kind of style, you're in a hot arena. It's over 100 degrees in there. And the guy's doing the exact same thing. Not a bad look. And that last fight was in Boston as well, right?
Exactly.
That wasn't even a factor. Now you added in that factor.
And keep in consideration here that if any type of cooking is going on, it's going to be of the home variety.
They love Masaranduba in Brazil.
They do. They
man.
love him. So the fact is, I mean, he trains full time in Brazil at Evolução Thai. He's got a good team behind him. I mean, guys like him and Pepe have really been showing off good improvements. But this is definitely a fight where he is a dog with some value on him.
And finally, we've got Wendell Oliveira taking on Darren Till. Basically a straight pick 'em here. Wendell Oliveira, the slight favorite at minus 120 with the comeback on Till. Plus 100. Who do you like?
We'll keep this one quick. Wendell Oliveira was a Muay Thai specialist. In his debut against Santiago Ponzinibbio, he got starched. Minute and a half in the first round. Now he's decided, okay, I'm not suited for 170 pounds. I'm going to come down to 155. One thing that I've really got to say about his opponent, Darren Till, is that on his UFC questionnaire, okay, they asked him, when did you start and why did you start fighting? Just to beat people up. Who's your hero? myself. You know what I mean? He is ultra cocky, and by all accounts, he is a stand-up machine. Not great on the ground. He's a luta livre purple belt. I believe he has a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Don't quote me on that. But not great on the ground, but stand-up, a machine. Against Wendell Oliveira, who is a stand-up fighter as well, and is coming off a KO loss. I think it's going to be a stand-up battle. I'm going with Darren Till on this one. Knock him out.
Very, very interesting. I'll tail you until there. Actually, to go back, we've got Francisco Trinaldo. I'm going to actually lean towards the underdog in that situation, too.
The value
2 to
certainly
1. 2 to 1. It basically forces me off of any bet on Norman Park, especially when you're going into Brazil. I think Trinaldo, we've seen him do it to so many prospects before in the past that I wouldn't be shocked if it happened, and I like 2 times my money as well. Stick around, more Bookie Beatdown coming right up. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown. Paul Shaughnessy and Cody Saftik here with you. All right, we are just about out of time, but before we go, we got to give you our picks of the week for the main card of UFC Fight Night Goiania, so why don't you get us started?
Carlos Condit, that's my guy. There's a reason why you don't fight for such a long time and they just leave you in the top 10, because they know you're good. Alves doesn't fight for a long time. Get him out of here. This guy wasn't as good as we thought. Carlos Condit is the real deal. He's the natural-born killer for a reason. I don't think the knee injury is going to hurt him all that bad. And to be honest, he fights like a more advanced, better version of Jordan Mein. And we saw what Jordan Mein was able to do to Thiago Alves before that kick. I don't think that kick's going to factor in, so Carlos Condit all day long. And
I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira. Why? Because we've already seen this fight. And Charles Oliveira dominates this situation. I am worried about the weight cut, as you always kind of have to be with this guy. A lot of times he doesn't make it. I would almost prefer, as a bettor, that he shows up 5 pounds over and they just go, we got to get this fight out of the way. We've been trying to do it for like over a year now, so let's just do it regardless. And he goes, all right, I got an extra 5 pounds and I don't feel so sick. Either way, it's fine for me. That doesn't affect the money that I make on the fight. So Charles Oliveira for me. Cody wants Carlos Condit to get back on track here. If you want to watch if you want to watch Cody and I break down the rest of UFC Fight Night Goiania, you can do that by going to fightnetwork.com, or you can download us on iTunes and all of that good stuff. We break down the rest of the card. I believe there's 6 more fights, and we give you our Kountermove and DraftKings teams. It's always a good time, so why don't you go do that? But that is officially all the time that we have for now. Hope you enjoyed the show. So for Chase Kaiser, our director, and Cody Saftik, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck. Welcome back to Bookie Beatdown, bonus edition.
Oh, my favorite part.
Oh, everyone likes the bonus edition. Anyway, let's get right back into the action without further ado. We got Hani Jason taking on Damon Jackson. Hani Jason can be had for minus 210 with comeback on Damon Jackson, plus 160. Who do you got?
Well, I used to be really big up on Damon Jackson coming out of that Texas regional scene, and he had a big submission win over Leonard Garcia to capture the 145-pound title prior to coming to the UFC, so I liked him. Coming into the fight with Yancy Medeiros, I thought that he'd be able to take down Yancy Medeiros, give him trouble. The problem is that he moved up to 155 for that fight against Medeiros. Medeiros is very tall and good on the ground, so he basically got decimated. I mean, he got beat up standing. He ended up getting choked out in the second round, which, being that he's a good jiu-jitsu guy, that kind of shocked me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it was very strange. He just looked like he was getting overpowered. But
yeah, very flat performance for him. Now he's dropping down to 145, which is obviously his home, and you know, at 9-1, he's got a good record. The flip side to all of that, though, is that Hani Jason is a guy that, other than that Jeremy Stevens fight, he typically, he's at home in Brazil, you know what I mean? I mean, the fans love this guy, and he's got a massive amount of power. At 30, I believe 30 or 31 years of age, he's probably as good as he's ever going to be right now, and I expect him to feed off that hometown crowd. He's able to use that power, hurt Damon Jackson. And if Damon Jackson can't get him to the ground and get him to the ground quick, he's going to be in some trouble. And what I've seen with Hani Jason is that he is hard to take down. He's a gamer. He's a good prospect, a middle-aged prospect. But I think Hani Jason should be able to dictate the tempo and get the win.
Couldn't agree with you more. Actually, that last fight that Hani Jason had against Peralta, too. Most people thought that Hani Jason won that fight, and Peralta, it was pretty close, but
and Robbie Peralta is really not all that bad. I mean, I'd put him probably at a higher level than Damon Jackson, who's in the UFC.
Robbie Peralta does okay in fights where he's
Yeah.
up against another striker. He struggles in fights when he goes up against Clay Guida and he's taken down and humped for
Taken down many of times.
And just held there. That's when he struggles. And but yeah, most people thought that Hani Jason won, so this guy should be on a pretty significant win streak at this point. I think he keeps it on track down in Goiania. Anyway, let's move on to the flyweight division where we've got Jussier da Silva, or Formiga, most would call him, taking on Wilson Reis. Formiga can be had for -155 with the comeback on Reis plus 115. Who do you got?
I'm extremely disappointed this fight is buried on the undercard of a free fight night. I mean, Jussier da Silva.
This should be the co-main event.
Absolutely.
Or
Well, no, but it
if
should
not
be
the co-main
main card
event,
at the
this should
very
at least
least.
be where Alex Oliveira versus KJ Nunes is. Come on, that's the third fight down on the card.
Yeah.
Or at least it should be where Wendell Oliveira versus Darren Till somehow made it onto the main card. But this thing's getting
0-1 in the UFC, taking on a guy making his debut.
Yeah, this should at
that
least
is
be
passing.
the first fight
ridiculous.
on the main card. But at the end of the day, this is all airing on Fox Sports. Like it's basically the same.
Then why not be the main event on the Fox Sports broadcast? If you look at Jussier Formiga, this is a guy that at one point was ranked the #1 flyweight in the world when he was fighting for Tachi Palace fights. Comes to the UFC, doesn't have as much success right off the hop, but look at him recently. I mean, yes, Scott chokes out Scott Jorgensen, which, I mean, Wilson Reis has done that as well. I suppose that's the new thing in the division. But also, the winner is Zach Makovsky. That
great.
is extremely impressive. Now you got Zach Makovsky, who goes on to get a fight against John Dodson on not on the pay-per-view main card, but on a very, very big pay-per-view, and he's being showcased and almost beats John Dodson. Zach Makovsky's no joke. Jussier da Silva is no joke. The most impressive thing I've seen with him, I mean, the Jorgensen fight, I don't really care because it was kind of a weird submission. Jorgensen thought that he got headbutted. It probably was a headbutt, and then he wasn't really reacting properly, got choked out. So let's just throw that fight out the window. It doesn't really matter. It's that Zach Makovsky fight. Zach Makovsky is a power wrestler, a very, very good wrestler. And whenever he takes Jussier da Silva down, Jussier da Silva's sweeps, like Formiga's sweeps, are brilliant. His ability to take the back is fantastic. Once he's on your back, you are not getting him off of you. I mean, good luck. His striking is good. He's fast. He's got all these great things going for him. Wilson Reis coming down to flyweight is fine, but he's a little slow. And we saw that 2 fights ago because his last fight, he also choked out Scott Jorgensen. But prior to that was a Joby Sanchez fight. Joby Sanchez gave him a go. Joby Sanchez dropped him in the second round. If he would have won that third round, would have won the fight. But he had a really tough time against Joby Sanchez because of the speed. I think Jussier Formiga, too fast for him. I don't think he'll be able to choke him out because they're both high-level BJJ black belts. But I think Formiga does enough to win all 3 rounds. The only thing I love more than, I mean, it's a great fight altogether, but the line is great. Formiga's got some value on him. At -155, I'll be betting that.
All right, let's move on. We've got Nicholas Dalby taking on Elizu Zaleski. Nicholas Dalby is a -350 favorite with the comeback on Zaleski plus 250. Who do you like?
I like Dalby, basically, and I mention this every time there's a Cage Warriors veteran on the card, but these guys they're UFC built. I mean,
And they fight up against like other legitimate people. Like you don't see cupcake matchups with these guys that are fighting in Cage Wars. Well, you do maybe at the beginning of the card when they're trying to build somebody in their first few fights, but once they get to the top, when they start winning championships, they're fighting, high-end European prospects, guys that they win those fights and they end up in the UFC the next time the UFC comes into Europe kind of thing. This is a weird situation where he's getting his debut down in Brazil, but I suppose when you get the call, you take it regardless of where it is on Earth. But that's
exactly that's exactly it. With Dalby, I mean, you get the call, it's like it's time to do it. And here's the thing with Cage Warriors. Graham Boyle used to be, the head guy at Cage Warriors, and they were having 12 shows a year. Graham Boyle has since stepped down. They have not had a show since he stepped down, so nobody really knows the state of Cage Warriors. But if you're a guy like Nicholas Dalby, you're the 170-pound champ for them. You're 14-0. I mean, the call for the UFC would just be around the corner, and thankfully he got it. In his last fight, he went all 5 rounds. He's got good cardio. The fight before that, he knocked out his opponent in the 4th round of 5 rounds. So I love guys that are able to get late finishes because it shows that they have good cardio, but they're able to translate that cardio into later in the fight. A lot of people don't have the type of power to finish an opponent in the 3rd round. This guy's knocking out people in the 4th round. I mean, mean, that's great. And the fact is, as I mentioned, in his last fight, he won the 5. Against his opponent who's a capoeira stylist. I mean, he started capoeira when he was young. He stuck with capoeira a long time. Then all of a sudden, he's like, oh, I should probably transition to MMA. Transitions to MMA, but he retains a lot of those elements of the capoeira in his game. Nicholas Dalby's a better striker than him. He's better on the ground with him. He's got more experience than him. He's fought bigger name guys. He's got better cardio. The only thing he doesn't have going for him is that he's not the Brazilian fighting in Brazil. But that shouldn't matter because he's a European fighter that's had to travel to different parts of Europe to fight.
And as you said, somebody who's shown to have very good cardio in the past as well.
Very good cardio. So if it's super hot out and everybody's sweating and it's like, oh, what round is it? We're going into the 3rd. Oh, well, normally I'm used to going into the 5th. So
Exactly.
Not a big deal to me. He'll be able to push that pace. And against Zaleski, I mean, yes, he's the hometown guy. He'll probably be more acclimated to that temperature. But I don't think he's going to have the cardio to keep up. So I think that even if he has a competitive first round, even if he's competitive early on, I think he'll get broken at some point. So the pick would have to be Nicholas Dalby.
I'm going to tail you on that one as well. Nicholas Dalby's the pick for me.
But just a quick thing on there. Minus 350, I'm not in love with. So that's the one thing that I'm very iffy on is that is not a good line for my money by no means, but I do like him.
At least if you're picking winners on this card, they were really taking you off on UFC 187
Oh, absolutely.
for that, but at least a lot of these situations, minus 350 isn't the worst. Now, we're early in the week right now.
Yeah.
Sure, as we get closer to fight time, a lot of these fights will, this fight will probably end up at least minus 500 by fight time. Anyway, let's continue with the action here where we've got Mirsad Bektic taking on Lucas Martins. Mirsad Bektic is a minus 350 favorite with the comeback on Martins, plus 250. Mirsad Bektic, high-end prospect from American Top Team, has looked pretty good. His last fight against Paul Redmond, that was a fight that a lot of people thought that he was going to ice him. Redmond was taking the fight on short notice. And
Bektic was a 9-1 favorite in that
yeah, it got really out of hand.
9.
I think if we learned anything about Bektic in that fight is that he's a very good wrestler, but I still think he's green. I don't think when he takes people to the ground, he doesn't have that finishing. It's not like obviously this is an unfair comparison, but it's not like Chris Weidman. Once Chris Weidman got Vitor Belfort to the ground, on last Saturday, it was okay, I'm going to advance to here. Okay, I get into mount, and I'm finishing him. We didn't really see that from Mirsad Bektic. Maybe because Redmond was such he's like a heel hook specialist, and he was afraid of that, so he never really let himself get into a spot where he could get bumped or whatever. He just kind of always stayed in side control in that fight, if memory serves me correctly. Lucas Martins has taken on the much better opponents in his life. He's coming off of a loss against Darren Elkins. By split decision. A lot of people thought Lucas Martins won that fight. Actually, that's false. Sorry, most people thought that Elkins won 30-27, and there was only one person out there, Dave Meltzer. When I looked on MMADecisions.com, he was the only person in the MMA media actually gave Lucas Martins the nod. So I suppose at the end of the day, it's whatever you prefer. But at the end of the day, he is coming off of a loss against a wrestler. You got to imagine Mirsad Bektic is going to do the exact same thing. But tailing off of what you were talking about Dalby earlier on, I hate minus 350 in this. We haven't really seen Mirsad Bektic struggle in this or have a stand-up war. And what happens if Mirsad Bektic isn't able to take you down? We kind of saw that in his fight against Chas Skelly, a fight that a lot of people thought that he lost.
It was a close fight.
Against Chas Skelly. There was the controversial point loss for Skelly in that fight, which ended up being
majority decision.
The majority decision. That was the exact point that he needed. So what happens if he's not able to take down Lucas Martins? That's a question that forces me not to bet on Mirsad Bektic in this situation. And suppose maybe a small bet on Lucas Martins, but it almost just kind of makes me feel like I'm passing on this one.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong by no means. Lucas Martins came to the UFC at 155 pounds on short notice and didn't look good by no means. I believe Edson Barbosa gave him the old welcome to the UFC, pal, and it didn't go good for him. But the drop down to 145, he's making some very significant improvements. Fighting out of shoot box, being 26 years old, he's still young, he's getting better and better. As you mentioned, what is going to happen if Mirsad Bektic can't get his opponent to the ground? That's a great question. However, Lucas Martins is not the opponent that's going to keep the fight standing. I don't think he's got the type of takedown defense to have anything.
You got to figure if he fought Darren Elkins in his last fight, oh, well, why did you lose? Well, he was able to hold me up against the fence and take me down. Like that's what Elkins does.
And Bektic,
and
I mean,
can't imagine it's going to be very much different.
Bektic he was one of the highest ranked prospects coming out of American top teams. So
Yep.
when you're a highly ranked prospect coming out of a good gym, that's all good stuff for you. But the Chaz Skelly fight, I love Chaz Skelly. Especially in that fight, I had bet Chaz Skelly. And I'm telling people, this guy's wrestling pedigree is fantastic. I mean, he's got good wrestling chops, he's got good grappling chops. And he was having a hell of a time taking Mirsad Bektic down. Mirsad Bektic is a good grappler. The biggest thing is that, as you mentioned, he has no killer instinct. He could not finish his dinner, let alone a UFC caliber opponent at this point. I'm sure he's getting better, and I'm sure those finishes will come. It seems like the finish will probably come from submission for him because his ground and pound, I mean, it's almost non-existent. That Paul Redmond fight, it's like you've got a fish out of water. The fish is out of water. He's just sitting flopping around, just pound his head in.
I had him all over my Countermove and my DraftKings on that. The whole fight, I was just like,
I was screaming.
I was like, dude, come on.
I'm like, he's gassed. He's a gassed Irishman who took the fight on a week's notice. You're a 9-1 favorite. Please, God, just take him out. And he
just
wouldn't.
didn't.
So for minus 350, I don't like it. However, I don't want to say very certain, but I am fairly certain that he's going to win this fight rather easily. However, I know he's not going to finish anybody. So the move would be Mirsad Bektic by decision. You'll get better value than minus 350.
That's good too. I actually like that bet for sure. Depending on what the odds are, if it's like minus 300, then it's obviously not worth it, right? But if it's considerably better, we've seen that Mirsad Bektic, didn't really have that killer instinct, and Lucas Martins gets finished, but it's when he's against guys that have really
and with
good
Lucas
stand-up.
Martins, his biggest thing is that he is extremely powerful. I mean, if he hits you, you're going down. But I mean, he doesn't set the shots up particularly well. And we've seen when he had a fight with a former Tough alumni by the name of Jeremy Larson, and I thought he was easily losing the first 2 rounds, and then he starches Larson in the 3rd round. But that shows his susceptibility against fast, quick, better fighters, quicker athletes. He's not going to get to the punch quicker. He's going to have to wait and land that big punch. And what we've seen with Bektic, never once has he even appeared to even, be the slightest bit dazed or wobbled. So I would have to assume that puncher's chance is not going to come through here. Bektic should be able to grind out that decision.
Let's move on to the women's strawweight division, where we have Juliana Lima as a minus 210 favorite taking on Erica Almeida, promotional newcomer, at plus 160. Almeida 7-0. The Lima, I believe, her win, or she lost her first fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, or Joanna Champion, and then had a close fight against Nina Ansaroff that she came away with. Almeida, I'm not going to pretend to know all about her. All I know is looking through her record, a lot of the fights that have vaulted her to this 7-0, not against top level competition. A lot of 1-2s, 1-1, that type of thing. So I think the line makers probably got it about right. Wish I knew more about Almeida, but it's a tough situation. I'm probably gonna have to pass on this situation. You have to imagine if they're really high on Almeida, Lima would be the type of fighter that they would probably set her up with as her first UFC fight in Brazil. Make it real comfortable for her. But you have a hot take on this one?
Yeah, well, I mean, with Juliana de Lima, she actually lost her fight coming before. I mean, she was fighting in Invicta, and she lost to Kat Kankopna, and didn't look, particularly great by no means. She got held against the fence. Then in her debut against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the only thing she tried to do that entire fight long was hold Joanna against the cage. That's what she did the entire time. Didn't work out for her. And that fight against Nina Ansaroff, I thought she lost. Other people in the MMA media thought she lost. But what did she do for the most part? Held her against the fence. That's kind of what she does. Now, I know what you mean. If they were big on Erica Almeida, maybe this would be the type of fight that's like, listen, she's 1-1 in the UFC. She could very well be 0-2 in the UFC. She lost that fight in Invicta, so, I mean, her recent history here is not particularly great. However, she was actually getting ready to fight Jessica Pena. Getting ready to fight Pena. Now you've got she ends up going.
Or you mean Penne?
Yeah, Jessica Penne.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know why I was mispronouncing that. She's supposed to fight Jessica Penne.
Pena, different divisions.
Jessica Penne. So anyway, she's supposed to fight Jessica Penne, and then Penne gets the call, and it's like, well, can you fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk? So she's like, okay, I'm out of this. So now you're Juliana. He's like, oh my god, I don't have an opponent. So, okay, we'll give you this Erica Almeida. We're in Brazil. We need a local Brazilian. There's a local Brazilian girl. She's 7-0, so she's got the record. Okay, fine. From all the scouting reports I've seen on her, everybody seems to say she's a striker. She's a striker. She's a striker. striker. But if you look at her record, she's got a bunch of submission wins. And that typically happens when you're fighting someone with no submission game. You think, why would I stand and trade strikes with you? I'm going to take you down and submit you. And that seems to be the mark here. When you look at Juliana Lima, she's got some decent wrestling. And she's got that ability. She loves to do it. She tries to do it in every single one of her fights. Just put you against the cage and hold you against the cage. And against a girl who is more of a striker, doesn't have big league experience, making a UFC debut, there's going to be jitters that are coming into play. That's all big. But my last and final point on this is we know Lima can go the distance. She's gone the distance in her last 2 fights. She's gone her distance in the last 3 fights. And she has that ability to grind you up against the cage. When you look at Erica Almeida, she's 7-0. Her longest fight was 6 minutes and 56 seconds. That's the longest fight she's ever had in her career. So she's never seen the 3rd round before. And I think with Lima, a girl who routinely goes to the 3rd round, a girl who has good Muay Thai and good wrestling, is going to be able to control the pace, dictate the action. This is probably going off 15 minutes, but I think Lima gets the win. And for minus 210, I don't hate it.
Unless Erica Almeida is the second coming of Joanna Champion, and
don't tell me that.
And she ices her in the first round. Either way, I have to pass on that situation. And finally, we've got Tom Breez taking on Luis Dutra Jr. Tom Breez is a minus 150 favorite with the comeback on Luis Dutra Jr. plus 110. Who do you got?
Well, normally I would go with Luis Dutra Jr. I actually like him. He was a member of Tough Brazil Season 2. He was the first pick by Team Nogueira. And you know what? I mean, he's got good potential. He's a little bit of an older fighter, but he's got good potential. Good striking, good wrestling, good, jiu-jitsu. He's kind of got that whole package. Now, he hurts his hand on the Ultimate Fighter. He wins his first 2 fights, and then I believe he had a torn ligament in his hand, pulls him off. The UFC signs him anyways. He fights Kichi Kunamoto, and he illegally elbows him a pile of times in the back of the head, KOs him. The note here, though, is that you illegally elbowed somebody in the back of the head a pile of times. You were known for getting injured prior to that fight.
You probably saw Travis Brown do it in the past. Worked out pretty well for Travis Brown.
You got to angle it on the ear, okay? Yeah. You can't just this is not a truck on the highway here, right? You can't give him one of those, right? You got to angle it a little bit, and that was his mistake. But let me ask you this: let's say you fight somebody, you basically take no damage, you illegally knock them out, you get disqualified. It's like, damn. Okay, on to the next one. This guy's taking over a year off, and why are you taking over a year off? He's known for injuries. Now, and injuries is going to be the same mark on him here. I think he's getting hurt at this point. I don't think Luis Dutra has it anymore. The flip side, Tom Breez, undefeated, 7-0, very, very big for the weight class. Now, training out of England, normally I'd say he does not have a shot here. But what he's really going to benefit from is that he has since moved full-time to TriStar. He lives at the dorms. He trains full-time. He got to the UFC on Faraz's Hobbies word. He's a purple belt under Faraz, training with the pro team. I think Tom Breez is going to have the better game plan, the better team, the better style, and I think he's going to be able to narrowly defeat Luis Dutra, probably by decision. However, this is a very close fight. I'm not super confident, so a pass might be in order as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Breez on that in this fight as well, but not too confident either. And we picked a lot of non-Brazilians in Brazil. Just saying, these things go to decisions. Exactly things happen.
In a close fight that goes to decision, Dutra.
It's because those arenas are so hot that the judges start getting dizzy and they just okay.
The crowd keeps chanting for this foreign guy to die. There's no way he won this fight.
10-9 Brazil. All right, let's move on to DraftKings and Kountermove teams. We'll have to do this really quickly, but I'll just run through mine quickly. We got my DraftKings team. I got Oliveira at 11-4. I liked where it was going. Oliveira. So many Oliveiras. I have to. Charles Oliveira, 11,400. I liked where it was going the last time that he took on Nick Lentz. Maybe Nick Lentz has improved a lot, but I've already seen it, so I'm taking it. I'm taking it again. I got Nicholas Dalby. I got KJ Nunes, 9,400. Mirsad Bektic. I'm not in love with that, but he's a minus 350 favor for a reason at 9,800. That's pretty damn good value. And Tom Breez at 9,400. Who's your DraftKings team?
DraftKings. Yeah, we have a similar team. I went Carlos Condit, 11,100. I love Carlos Condit in this fight. He's got 5 rounds to deal with. He's a punch output kind of guy, so he's going to be able to rack up those significant strikes. Good on the ground as well, but I think he's going to get the finish at some point. So he's somebody that I definitely want on my team. Formiga, UCR Formiga de Silva at 10,100. Another guy that I think that he's going to be able to have his way with Wilson Hayes in the grappling department. He's a very fast striker on his feet. And we've seen with flyweights, classically, they're so fast, they have so much output that they're able to score a lot of points in these crazy scrambles. So I think Formiga is definitely somebody I want on on my team. Mirsad Bektic, I had him for 9,800. This is like you said. I got thinking the more we did the show, the more I thought about it. You know what? He's not a finisher. By no means do I think this guy's going to get a finish. Should I drop him off my team? Well, his saving grace is that he's such a better wrestler that he's able to get the takedowns. We get 2 points per takedown. He's able to keep getting these takedowns, improve the position, and just get those little strikes. Get those little significant strikes. You know, just a little something. That's all going to add up.
Yep.
We saw with Colby Covington. He landed, I believe, 100 significant strikes. But he barely even threw punches. But it's that ability to ride on top, little shots.
Yep.
So that's possible. Finish off, we got Tom Breez at 9,500 and KJ Noons at 9,400. Both guys, Tom Breez is a finisher. If you look at his record, he's finished all 7 of his pro fights.
I think Breez was 94. Well, I wrote it down as 94. Either way.
Yeah, possible, very possible. Maybe I just reversed them by accident. But Tom Breez still in that range. Cheap, undefeated guy, training at TriStar. We know what kind of gym they are. He should have a good game plan. And finally, KJ Noons at 9,400. Alex Oliveira is by no means going to try to take this guy down.
No.
Therefore, it's going to be a stand-up battle.
Yeah, even if he loses, it's a stand-up battle where both guys are scoring some points.
And KJ lands punches.
Yeah,
so
and he has knockout ability. We've seen it in the past. So, same. We're pretty similar there. I had Dalby, and you had you had Formiga, I believe. Those
Did you go Condit?
No, I went with
that's more. I like Condit.
That's
really
the difference
like
between our
Condit.
team. Countermove, I went with Charles Oliveira again. I've got Noons, Dalby, Breez, and Hani Jason.
Not bad. I went with Condit, 5,500. Hani Jason, 5,300. Charles Oliveira, 4,900. Good value on him there.
Yep.
Mirsad Bektic, again, at 4,700. If I'm going to switch somebody out, it'd be him. And Norman Park at 4,600, simply just because this is somebody that is a favorite, and he was very underpriced on Countermove. And I believe that's because, as Pat Mayo explains, Countermove goes by how you scored in the past, how you scored traditionally. And Norman Park is not somebody that scores very often. I mean, he does have one finish under his record in his UFC tenure, but someone who prefers to just go the distance, hold you up against the fence, pull you to the ground, pitter patter, pitter patter. So for 4,600, he's cheap. He's probably not going to score a whole lot, but he has that opportunity. So. And
we're just about out of time, but before we go, we have to give you our picks for the full card of UFC Fight Night Goiania. So why don't you get it started?
I'd love to, and I really like UCR Formiga de Silva.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned in the show, I think that he's the better grappler, and he's a lot faster than Wilson Reis. Wilson Reis, is, if anybody can remember, was fighting back in the Elite XC days where he was their inaugural champion. So this is a guy that's been around a long time. I know he's only 30 years old, and now he's training at Alliance full time. I'm sure that's gonna aid him. But Formiga training at Nova União, he's got equally as good as training partners. He's a stud in his own right, and I just think that he's a little quicker and a little bit of a step ahead of Wilson Reis in basically all aspects of MMA. So barring a fluke submission or a fluke knockout, this should be his fight to win.
And I'm going to go with Hani Jason. Why, you ask? Because Hani Jason's in Brazil. They freaking love him there. He's taking on Damon Jackson, who fancies himself a grappler. Got subbed by Yancy Medeiros. Now, he was very good in his times at Legacy. He was, a pretty decent champion. There was a bit of hype on him coming into it, but I think this is a situation where you're going down to Brazil, very angry crowd. I believe it's the first time they've ever been in Goiânia. Right. The place is going to be pumping, and they are all going to be telling Damon Jackson that he should probably go ahead and die. So, Hani Jason minus 210. I like the odds, and I think he gets her done. But that is officially all the time that we have for now. So, any final thoughts there, Cody?
No, I mean, once again, I was hoping this card was going to be earlier on in the day, but it's going to be a nighttime Saturday event, and it's going to be one of those things. If you watch it live, you're going to have a good time. If you watch it on tape delay, you're going to have a good time. But regardless, you have those super shows like the UFC 187, and you got these fight night cards. And these fight night cards, they always deliver as well, man. You might not recognize a lot of the guys on this list, but they know that you don't know who they are, and they want to show you who they are.
Lots of finishes.
So they tend to go for it. And I do very like that. Or I very much appreciate that about these lower level fight night cards. So I'll be looking forward.
All right. So for our director Chase Kaiser, doing all the dirty work behind the glass, and Cody Zaptic for offering his awesome commentary and analysis as usual. I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.